shortly. And we are live! Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery with our live virtual studio audience. And we are going to get underway with Masechet Keritut, a brand new Masechta. That's right, folks. So we're going to get it up on the screen for you all here. There you go. You can all see that now. And we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best, see what we can do with this. Hope for the best. Expect the worst, hope for the best, right, guys? So with that in mind, let us start together with chapter 1 of Masechet Keritut. What is it going to be talking about? Let's first identify that. So Keritut is from the word karet, the punishment of spiritual excision. So before we start anything, let's just get one thing clear. We've got transgressions which one can do where there is a punishment of karet, of spiritual excision, being spiritually cut off. There are transgressions that one can do where there is a capital punishment, a death penalty. I really just want to point out, before we say anything else, that in all of these cases, the reason for the strictness of these punishments or these consequences is not because God is just sitting there hoping and waiting for us to slip up so that he can give us these punishments. They're really there to emphasize to us the severity of the transgression. If we understand what's at stake, then we can understand how bad it is for us, either physically, spiritually, whatever the case might be. The Torah is deterring us from particular acts, from particular actions, from acting on particular impulses or temptations. And so it's important that we realize that these penalties and these punishments are not there because God has got nothing better to do than to just mete out punishments on his people. But it's really there for us to understand the severity of these different transgressions. So I really just wanted to get that clear before we start. That being said, there are many different averot. There are many different prohibitions, transgressions that carry a death penalty. But you can only get the death penalty if you have been warned by witnesses, and if a particular procedure can take place, and if it can be proved without a shadow of a doubt that you have violated this prohibition, and if the Bet Din have adjudicated and come to that conclusion. There's so many things that need to happen before a person can get a capital punishment. And of course, none of this is relevant nowadays because we don't have a Sanhedrin who are capable of giving out the death penalty. But once upon a time, they did. And the thing is as follows. If you did not have the warning beforehand, or if you did not have witnesses who could testify in court, then you wouldn't get the death penalty, but you could be chayav karet. You could be liable for this punishment of karet, whatever it might mean, spiritually cut off from the Almighty. The Gemara says some other things as well. So that's roughly what this Masechta is talking about. Now, there are other things which a person can do where the punishment is kares, and so we're going to see a lot of different things. But let's start for now with chapter 1, Mishnah 1, in which we talk about the 36 sins, or the 36 cases. That's a much nicer word. The 36 cases which carry a chiyuv kares, which are mentioned in the Torah. Now, 34 of these cases are negative prohibitions, and 2 of them are positive mitzvot, which if you violate, there would be a chiyuv kares. And we start with 15 sexual averot, 15 sexual prohibitions. Says the Mishnah, Shloshim vashesh kresos b'Torah. There are 36 cases in the Torah which carry this punishment of kares. Number 1, haba al ha'em, a person who has intimate relations with his mother. Torah does not recommend this as a course of action. Number 2, v'al eshes ha'av, or one who has relations, one is intimate with the wife of his father, which doesn't necessarily have to be his biological mother. It could be his stepmother. Number 3, v'al kala, with his daughter-in-law. Number 4, haba al hazachur, a person who is intimate with a male being intimate with another male. Va'al habehema, number 5, or with an animal. V'isha hamavia es habehema aleha. Number 6 is a woman who is intimate with an animal. So these first six cases would carry a punishment, the death penalty of stoning. But in the absence of witnesses or of prior warning, then the punishment would be kares. Number 7, haba al isha uvita, a person who is married to a woman and he is intimate with her and her daughter. So there would be a punishment of srifa, of burning, which doesn't mean how we depict it of being burnt at the stake. It was a whole procedure. We'll get to it when we get to Sanhedrin. But that would be the punishment if there was no witnesses or there was no prior warning. Number 8, val eshes ish, a person who is intimate with a married woman. So that person would be punished with strangulation, which again doesn't just mean hanging from the gallows. There's a particular process which we were not going to come to now. Number 9, haba al achoso, one who is intimate with his sister, va'al achos aviv, or with the sister of his father, his aunt, va'al achos imo, with the sister of his mother, his aunt, his maternal aunt, va'al achos ishta, or his sister-in-law, va'al eshes achiv, or his brother's wife, which is also a sister-in-law. Number 14, va'al eshes achi aviv, the wife of his father's brother. Number 15, va'al hanida, a person who is menstruating. Those are the first 15 cases, which are all sexual relations which one is not allowed to have. And the punishment, if they are not warned beforehand, would be the punishment of kares. Number 16, we're going to see 5 sins now, which would otherwise have carried the punishment of stoning. Hamagadef, one who blasphemes the name of Hashem. Number 17, v'ha'oved avodah zara, one who worships idols. 18, v'hanosein mizara lamolech, one who gives his children over to the idol-worshipping service of Molech, to the fire god. Number 19, uval ov, one who violates the prohibition of necromancy, communicating with the dead by placing a skull in his armpit. And number 20, hamachalel es hashabbos, one who violates and transgresses and desecrates Shabbos. V'tamei sha'achal es hakodesh. When it comes to these next 16 cases, there's no capital punishment, but there would be a chiyuv kares. So what comes up over here? Number 21, v'tamei sha'achal es hakodesh, somebody who is impure, 8 sacrificial sanctified items. V'habal mikdash tamei, one who came to the Beis HaMikdash in a state of ritual impurity. Ha'ochel chelev, one who eats fats which he shouldn't be eating. V'dam, one who eats blood, consumes blood. V'nosar, one who consumes meat which has been left over from a korban and the time has passed for it to be considered valid to eat. Pigul, number 26, is the status that gets conferred onto a sacrifice if you invalidate it during those 4 services of shechita, of receiving the dam, of transporting the dam, or of sprinkling the dam. So if you had the wrong machshava, that you were going to eat it or burn it outside of its time, then it gets the status of pigul. And if you eat it, you're going to be chayav kares. Not you, of course. You would never be chayav kares, but one would be. Number 27, hashochet v'hama'aleh b'chutz, one who slaughters, this is 27 and 28, one who slaughters and brings up a sacrifice outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Number 29, ha'ochel chametz b'pesach, one who eats chametz on Pesach. Do not do that. Number 30 and 31, v'ha'ochel v'ha'osa melacha b'yom kippurim, one who eats or who does melacha, who performs forbidden labor on Yom Kippur. Number 32, hamafate mes hashemen, one who mimics the ritual oil, the anointing oil that had a particular way of preparing and would be used in the Beis HaMikdash, you've prepared it and mimicked it for your own use, you're going to be chayiv kares. Or you have done a similar thing with the ingredients and the recipe for the incense mixture. Number 34, v'hasach b'shemen amishcha, or you for your own cosmetic purposes have decided to smear yourself with the anointing oil that was used in the Beis Hamikdash. Number 35 is Pesach, HaPesach. You can be chayiv kares if you do not bring a korban Pesach, v'hamila, and you can be chayiv kares if you do not arrange for yourself to be circumcised. And those last two, korban Pesach and bris milah, says the Mishnah, b'mitzvos aseh. These are positive mitzvahs which you have to do. You're commanded to eat the korban Pesach. You're commanded to make sure that you have had a circumcision. So if your parents did not arrange your circumcision, it would be your responsibility later in life. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be chayiv kares. So these are all those are two positive mitzvahs, as opposed to the other 34, which were negative. Moving on to Mishnah base. Al elu, on these, the 34 negative prohibitions that we've talked about in the previous Mishnah. Al elu chayavim al zadonam kares. If you purposely violate these, there can be a chiyuv kares. As we said, in some instances, it's because there wasn't a witness or there wasn't prior warning. But if you do them on purpose, you will be chayiv kares, val shigagasam chatas. And if you did them by accident, if you did them inadvertently, then you are going to be obligated to bring a korban chatas, a sin offering. V'al lo hodah shelahen asham talui. And if you do not know whether you have transgressed, there is a doubt surrounding whether you have transgressed them or not, either because you didn't know it was forbidden or because you knew it was forbidden but you don't know if you've done it, then you're going to be liable to bring an asham talui, which is a provisional guilt offering, which kind of leaves you in limbo until you know either way. So those are the rules. For doing them on purpose, without proper pre-warning or witnesses, you're going to be chayiv kares. Doing them by accident, you're going to be chayiv v'chatas. Doing them, but you're not sure if you've done them, you're going to be chayiv an asham talui. Chutz min ha'matame mikdash v'kadasha. Except for one who contaminates sacrificial items or eats, partakes, consumes consecrated items. Mipnei shehu ba'ola v'yared. Because in those instances, you're going to be chayiv for a korban ola v'yared, which is a sliding scale korban asham, which means that depending on your wealth value, depending on how wealthy you are, that's going to determine what you need to bring. It's a chatas. So if you are rich, then you're going to bring an animal. If you're poorer, you're going to bring a bird. And if you're poorest, then you're going to bring flour. That's the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says in those two exceptions, you're bringing a sliding scale sacrifice. The Chachamim say, Af hamagadef, even a blasphemer is going to bring this sliding scale sacrifice. Shneimar, because it says in the verse, Torah achas yeh lachem la'osa bishkaga. There is going to be one Torah, one law for someone who does an aveira b'shogeg, and it excludes, says the Chachamim, yatsa megadef. It excludes someone who blasphemes. Why? She'eino osei maseh, because they haven't actually done anything. They have sinned with their speech, and because speech is not an action, they are not going to be bringing this sliding scale. There we go. Mishnah Gimel. We're going to see some interesting halachas about a korban chatas. And we're going to see that this is in relation to a woman giving birth. Because a woman who gives birth is supposed to bring a korban chatas. And it's actually a bird sin offering, if I'm not mistaken. So a woman who gives birth is supposed to bring this korban chatas ha'of, a bird offering as a sin sacrifice. One of the reasons for that is because we assume, it's not an aveira, it's not it's not forbidden to have children, but there's an assumption that she will have said things which one would not be encouraged to say under ordinary circumstances, but because of the pain that she is undergoing from giving birth. Because apparently, rumor has it that childbirth is apparently worse than man flu. I don't know. Who am I to disagree? This is what they say. This is exactly to the millions watching on YouTube. This is what they say. They say that women that childbirth is quite painful, and so a woman might say things which are not befitting for a princess of Hashem. And so there was a concept of bringing a korban chatas. I'm sure that's not the only reason, but nonetheless, this is what they would be doing. But there's interesting things that happen to this to this korban on account of a few different things happening. So the Mishnah says, Yesh mevios korban v'ne'echal. There are those who would bring a korban and would also then the korban would be eaten as part of the process. V'yesh mevios v'eino ne'echal. And there are those who bring a korban, but it would not get eaten. And we'll see these cases soon. V'yesh she'eino mevios. And there are those who would not have to bring a korban at all. Elu mevios korban v'ne'echal. These are the women who would be bringing a korban v'ne'echal. They would be bringing this because they have given birth to something, right? And it would be eaten as part of the normal course of bringing that sacrifice. So obviously there's a regular case of a mother giving birth to a child. We're dealing with types of miscarriages where it could be called into question as to whether the mother has actually given birth to a viable fetus. So the Mishnah says as follows. These are the women who bring a korban and it would get eaten. Hamapeles kamin behema chayava off. Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir starts us off and says that if a woman has given birth to a fetus, she has miscarried a fetus, which looks like a behema chayava off. It looks like it's got a form. It's got a bodily form. It might look a bit like an animal or a wild animal or a bird. So because it has got some kind of shape to it, Rabbi Meir would say that she is going to have to undergo this procedure of bringing the korban. Chachamim say, Ad shehevo mitzrasa adam. It's insufficient that it has some form, like you can start to distinguish, arm features and leg features and head features, etc. The Chachamim say it has to be a fetus which at least looks like it's got human form. Continuing on, so if it didn't, then you wouldn't be bringing a korban. So hamapeles sandal, if a mother, God forbid, was to miscarry and to miscarry a fetus that looked like a sandal, meaning it just looked flat, or shilya, or she gives birth to the placenta, ushafir murukam, or gives birth to the amniotic sac, v'hayotza mechutach, or it has to be come out in pieces to be able to get the baby out of the mother. V'chein shivcha shepila, and also a maidservant, a non-Jewish maidservant who was owned by a Jew who miscarried. Mevia korban v'nechal. In all of these instances, the mother is going to have to bring the korban chatas, and it's going to be eaten by the priests, by the kohanim, as a regular korban chatas. Mishnah Daled. Elu mevios ve'eino ne'echal. These are those who would end up bringing a korban, but it wouldn't get eaten, wouldn't get processed in that way. So these are cases where a woman has miscarried, but they're not entirely sure if there was an actual baby, and therefore she's not chayav a definite chatas. Says the Mishnah, Hamapeles ve'ein yadua ma hipila. She's given birth and she doesn't know exactly what she has miscarried. I think the Gemara says maybe she gave birth into water and then it got carried away. So there's no way of proving definitively what it was that she miscarried. You've got two women who have both had miscarriages. One of them was a miscarriage for which there would be no korban, and the other miscarried a fetus for which there would be a korban, but you don't know which is which. So if they got mixed up, then you wouldn't be able to. Then you would both bring the korban, but it can't be processed because you don't know which is which. However, I'm a Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with this. Ei Masai, when would you say that these korbanos can't be eaten? This is when the women have gone their separate ways. And there's absolutely no way of processing these two women together. But if the women are still together, having both had miscarriages and you're not sure which is which, then mavios korban v'ne'echal, then you would be able to bring at least one korban, which could get processed and eaten, because you could just say, well, if it's for this woman, then this will be the korban, and if not, then it will be for the other woman. So one of the korbanos, at the very least, according to Rabbi Yossi, would be able to be processed. Mishnah, hey, elu she'eino mavios. These are women who would not have to bring a korban at all if if they miscarried these types of fetuses. Hamapeles shafir malemayim. If a woman was to miscarry an amniotic sac full of water, it says, there's no form, there's no mass. Male damo, it was full of blood. Male ganinim, it was full of different colors, but nothing resembling flesh. Hamapenes kamindagim v'chagavim shkatzim urumasim. A woman who miscarries a fetus which resembles a fish or grasshoppers or different insects, creepy crawlies. The point here is that there's no human form. Hamapeles yom arbaim v'yotze dofen, or one who miscarries on her 40th day of pregnancy, which is the minimum amount of time for it to be viable. V'yotze dofen, and one who gives birth by cesarean section. So we're talking about, I think, a full-term pregnancy there, but it was born by cesarean section. So in each of those instances, she would not have to bring a korban. So in all of those instances, we're talking about miscarriages. That last one is even if she delivers full-term, but she delivers by C-section, because the Torah, in commanding a woman to bring this korban, says that she gives birth. So the Torah then means gives birth in a natural way rather than through cesarean section. But says Rabbi Shimon Mechayev b'yotze dofen. Rabbi Shimon says that someone who gives birth even through cesarean section would have to bring a korban. Mishnah Vav. Okay, here comes my first really tricky one of the night. You can see how long it is. So Mishnah Vav. There are different purity schedules for a mother who gives birth to a male child or to a female child, historically. So a woman who gave birth to a girl, to a daughter, would count 14 days of impurity, and then would count another 66 days where she would be pure, even if she sees blood. And then at the end of that time period, on the 81st day, that's when she would bring her korban to the Beis Hamikdash. For a boy, she would be tamei for 7 days, and then another 33 days on top of that she has to count, where if she sees blood, she'll still be pure, and then she would go to the Beis Hamikdash on the 41st day. But there's all kinds of interesting things that happen if she was to see blood on the night before she was able to go to the Beis Hamikdash, because theoretically, it's the 81st day, right? But she can't get to the Beis Hamikdash yet because it's not daylight. So there's lots of interesting things that happen as a result of that. So I will try and do my best to take us through this Mishnah, but this will literally be the first time me understanding it. So good luck. Let's just say it like that. Says the Mishnah, Hamapeles or lishmonim ve'echad. A woman who miscarries on the night of the 81st day. So the following morning, she would have been going to the Beis Hamikdash, right? And any blood that has been coming during that time would have been pure, okay? But now, as she enters into this 81st day, is it going to stop her from bringing her korban or not? That's what we're trying to do with. So she has this miscarriage on the night of the 81st day. Beis Shammai potrim min korban. Beis Shammai says that she is going to be patur. She's going to be excused from bringing a second korban. Right? I hope that much makes sense. Right? Is this considered to be kind of within the same counting framework from that first birth, from that first child? Or is this going to be a new count because it's day 81 and she hasn't got to the Beis Hamikdash yet? So Beis Shammai say, no, this is still going to be included in her first shift. Uveis Hillel Mechayvim. Beis Hillel say that she is going to be liable. This is going to be treated as a second birth, a second miscarriage, second generator of liability to bring a korban. Amru Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel say to Beis Shammai, Mishnah or lishmonim ve'echad miyom shmonim ve'echad. Right? What's the difference between the night of the 81st day and the day of the 81st day? What's the difference between them? Im shaveh lo latum'ah. If they're going to be equal with regards to tum'ah, meaning that if she experiences a discharge of blood, she's going to be impure. Lo yishve lo korban. Should she then not be? Should it not be equal as well with regards to a korban? Let's pretend, for all intents and purposes, that she went in the morning to the Beis Hamikdash on day 81. She did her korban, and then she had a miscarriage, or she had this discharge coming out of her. Then we're going to tell her that she is now chayiv another korban. So what's the difference? She hasn't had the chance to bring a korban yet. That's true, but it's within the time frame for her to really be chayiv for another korban. Amru lahem Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai said back to Beis Hillel, Lo, im amartem b'mapeles yom shmonim ve'echad sheken yatsa b'shah shehi re'uya lahavi bar korban. So if you're going to say, with a miscarriage on the 81st day, that it was coming out at a time when she would have to bring another korban, so if she was having the miscarriage in the day, then I can understand because she's allowed to go to the Beis Hamikdash during the day. But this is happening at a time when she can't go to the Beis Hamikdash, at a time when she can't bring a korban, and that's why Beis Shammai would be lenient in that regard and excuse her from being chayav for another korban. Amru lahem Beis Hillel. So Beis Hillel say back to them, the deciding factor here, right, is going to be a woman who has a miscarriage on day 81, which falls on Shabbos. Because if it was falling on Shabbos, that's going to be our deciding factor, because she's not going to be able to bring a korban on the Shabbos if she experiences if that's when she reaches day 81, right? But you're going to agree with me that she's going to be chayav for a korban. So that's a time when she can't bring a korban, but you're still going to turn around to me and say that she should be chayav another korban. So therefore, you should say the same if she gave birth at night. Well, I think I'm understanding this. Because that's the time when she can't bring a korban, but you're going to agree that she needs to. Amru lahem Beis Shammai, but Beis Shammai say back to Beis Hillel, Lo, there's a difference. No. If you want to say with regards to a miscarriage on day 81 that falls on Shabbos, that even though she can't bring an individual offering, right? However, ra'ui la korban sibur, but there is still the capacity for sacrifices to be brought. Communal sacrifices can be brought. How can you then use that as your proof for the night time of the 81st day? You can't bring personal sacrifices or community sacrifices. So that's why Beis Shammai still stick to their guns. And they say this is a time when she can't be bringing korban. and therefore she's not going to be liable. So don't go bringing me proofs about Shabbos, because by Shabbos there is still such a thing as bringing sacrifices. It's just that she can't bring a sacrifice, right? So that's how they still end up sitting on either sides of the fence with this issue. Furthermore, hadamim einan mochichin. What on earth is that in reference to? What Mishnah am I on? Where am I? Who am I? I understood that bit. Now this is where I blow it. Hadamim einan mochichin. When she bleeds on the 81st night, that is not going to prove. What's it not going to prove? As for the ritual impurity status of the blood, Beit Hillel's opinion. Okay. So what's going to be? Is it going to be impure or is it going to be pure? Is she going to be? Is the blood going to have the status of the last 66 days, or is it going to have the status of this new time frame if she experiences it in that night time? Because really it's day 81, and if she was experiencing it after her korban, then it's definitely going to contaminate her, but she hasn't been able to bring the korban yet. So the Mishnah says, Hadamim einam mochichin, the blood is not going to prove what the halacha should be with regard to the korbanot, shehamapelet betoch melaot dameha tmeinu petura min korban, because they are going to hold that one who miscarries before the completion of her 80 days, the blood is going to be impure, but she's going to be exempt from bringing a korban. Oh, I was doing so well there, right up until the end. Very good. Mishnah Zion. How are we doing for time? 35 minutes, crikey. Okay. So, Ha'isha sheyesh aleha safek chamisha zivos safek chamisha leidos. Okay, so from day 81, she has to bring a korban to be able to enter the Beis Hamikdash. But there's another type of person over here. There is a zava. There is a person who can experience an irregular flow, a particular type of discharge. And if she has this over 3 consecutive days, then she's going to become tameh. She's going to become a zava gadola, and she's going to have to wait 7 clean days. Then she's going to go to the mikveh, and then the following day, she's going to be able to bring a korban. Right, and she's going to bring 2 birds for this korban, a chatat and an olah. And for a yoledet, for a woman who gives birth, it's going to depend on how wealthy she is. So what are we talking about over here? Ha'isha sheyesh aleha sfeik chamisha zivos usfeik chamisha leidos. There is a doubt as to whether she has, there is uncertainty about whether the fact that she has had kind of 5 periods of this discharge, which could mean that she has to bring 5 different korbanot, and the same with a woman who goes through 5 kind of closely timed miscarriages, right? So if there's a doubt as to whether this creates kind of 5 separate obligations, or whether it can all be considered as one time frame because it happens so close together, so the Mishnah says, if she is in these doubtful statuses, mevia korban echad, then she's going to only bring 1 korban that's going to cover all of those different discharges. Va'ucheles bazvachim, and then from that point she's going to be able to eat from sacrifices. Ve'ein hashar aleha chova, and she doesn't have to bring 4 other sacrifices. Chamesh leidos vada'is, if a person has 5 definitive births, 5 definitive miscarriages with enough space between them, or chamesh zivos vada'is, or 5 periods of zav discharge, then mevia korban echad, then she's going to bring 1 offering, va'ocheles bazvachim, and she's going to then be allowed to take part in eating sacrifices, but v'sha'ar aleha chova, but she is still going to have to bring 4 other sacrifices in the near future. Maaseh, says the Mishnah, there was an extreme situation. There was a story that happened where many people needed to come to the Beis Hamikdash to bring bird sacrifices, and that made the prices of birds skyrocket. So the Mishnah says, there was a time where there was so much demand for these birds that to buy a pair of birds would cost you a golden dinar, which is extremely expensive. It shouldn't cost that much. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So it was putting pressure on people because it was unaffordable, and they needed to bring them. So Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel came along and said, Hama'on hazeh. He said, I swear by God, basically, Lo alin halayla. I will not go to sleep tonight ad sheyihu b'dinarim, until the price comes down, until the price of these birds comes down to silver dinarim. Nichnas lebeis din v'limed. He went into the Beis Din and he taught Ha'isha sheyesh aleh chamesh leidas v'das, that a woman who has 5 definitive births, or chamesh zivos v'das, or a woman who has 5 definitive discharges of zava, mevia korban echad, she's only going to bring 1 korban, va'echenes bazvachim, and then that's going to enable her to take part in eating sacrifices. Ve'ein hashar aleh chava, and she's not going to be obligated to bring anything else. And he did that as a way of frightening people to cutting the price. And as a result of that, the price of buying these pairs of birds that day stood at 1/4 of a silver dinar, 4 per dinar. So the price went down 100-fold as a way of disincentivizing profiteers to take advantage of people that needed to be able to buy these birds. Mazel tov, ladies and gentlemen, on completing chapter 1 of Maseches Keritut. How are we doing? Should we carry on with chapter 2?
It's a long chapter, chapter 2.
It's a long chapter, chapter 2. Should we see how we do with it?
Okay.
We can do a little bit. Let's do a little bit of it, at the very least. Okay. Let's see how I do. Parak Beis, chapter 2. So, there's a concept which we have seen in other cases before. We saw this right at the beginning with Maseches Brachas, a concept of mechusar kippurim, someone who lacks atonement. What does it mean that you lack atonement? It means that you need to be able to go to the mikveh to be able to finalize your process, but you can't go to the mikveh till the following day. So it can reach sunset, right? It can reach sunset and your process will be completed, but you're not officially tahor until the following day. So you're lacking that last part of your process. You're just waiting from sunset till the next morning to be able to complete your process. So the Mishnah says that there are 4 types. Arba mechusarei kippurim. There are 4 types of people who would be considered a mechusar kapara. This is going to be, are we going to see them? I think we do see them. Yeah. But we're going to see this is a zav and a zava, and it's going to be someone who gives birth and someone who was a mitzorah. So these people will go through their counting, their time periods, and then they're going to just be waiting to go to the mikveh the following morning before they complete their purification process. So it means that they can't take part in sacrificial meat. They can't eat sacrificial meat. Says the Mishnah, Arba mechusrei kippurim. There are 4 types. Va'arba mevi'in ala zadon kishgaga. And there's also going to be 4 types of people that would bring a korban if they did a particular prohibition, a particular sin on purpose, like they would also bring if they did it by accident. So the Mishnah starts off. These are the ones who are lacking atonement. Hazav v'hazava, a person who has a zav discharge, which is a male, or a zava, a female who has a zava discharge, v'hayoledes, one who gives birth, v'hametzorah, and one who was a metzorah, someone who had saras. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, ger mechusar kapara. A convert is also mechusar kapara, is also needing to have a lacks atonement because, as we can see on the screen there, they can have their circumcision, they can go to the mikveh, but until the Kohen sprinkles blood on his behalf, until blood is sprinkled on his behalf, he is also going to be mechusa kapara. So he adds in a fifth category. The Nazir leyeno v'tiglachto v'tumato. And I think he also adds in another one of a Nazir, somebody who undergoes a Nazirite pledge. So he's not allowed to drink wine, and he's not allowed to cut his hair, and he's not allowed to become impure again until he has completed his purification process. So according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he would be included in this count. So it'll be 6 categories, but according to the Tanna Kama, there are 4. So Mishnah base. Elu mevina lazadon kishgaga. These are 4 people who bring a korban for something that they do b'mezid, as well as if they did it b'shogeg. Says the Mishnah, haba ala shifcha, somebody who is intimate with a shifcha charufa, which we're going to talk more about. But a shifcha charufa is essentially someone owned by 2 masters and is currently half free. So that's a shifcha charufa. We're going to talk more about her as we go through the parak. So these are people. Abar ala shifcha is going to be, they're going to have to bring a korban asham, a guilt offering, whether they did it on purpose or by accident. The nazir shenitma, or a Nazirite who became impure, they are going to have to bring 2 birds, a chatat and an olah, sin offering and an elevation offering. They're going to have to bring a sheep asham, but they're going to have to do that whether they became contaminated on purpose or whether by accident. V'al shavuas ha'edus, somebody who swears that he doesn't know what happened to be able to testify in court. So he was swearing falsely. He actually did know what happened, whether he did it on purpose or whether he did it by accident. He's going to be chayav. V'al shavuas ha'pikadon, or if a person makes an oath denying that something was given to him to look after, or that he owed him money, or he owed a person money, so there he's also going to be chayav whether he did it on purpose or by accident. Mishnah Gimel. Chamisha mavin korban echad al averos harbe. There are 5 people who are going to bring 1 korban, even though they did an avera multiple times, right? Because theoretically, if a person did an avera multiple times, they should be liable for each time that they transgressed. So the Mishnah says there are going to be 5 categories of people where if they did an avera multiple times, they are going to be chayav only once. And the chamisha mevin korban olaviyard, and there are going to be 5 categories of people who have to bring a sliding scale korban, which will depend on their wealth. So says the Mishnah, Elu mevin korban echad al averas harbe. These are the ones who will bring a 1 korban for multiple violations. Haba al hashifcha bias harbe, one who is intimate with a shifcha charufa multiple times. They are only going to be chayav for 1 korban, even though they did the act on a few different occasions. The nazir shenitma tumas harbe, and for a nazir who became ritually impure due to touching something multiple times, v'hamakane leishta al yidei anashim harbe, or one who could bring about the situation of a sota, one who is jealous of his wife with several different men, it's going to only warrant 1 korban. Umitzora shenisnaga negaim harbe, and a mitzora who touches something multiple times. These are going to be cases where they only bring 1 korban despite having done the same thing over and over again. Hevi tziparav v'nisnaga, if he had brought the birds that he was supposed to bring on the first day of his purification, and before he could reach the end of his process, v'nisnaga, then he touched, v'nisnaga, then he got afflicted with tsaras again, lo alulo, then it's not going to finish his count he's going to have to bring 2 birds again. Ad sheyavies chataso, but he's only going to have to bring 1 korban chatas. So as long as he's not brought that korban chatas, however many times he re-displays a patch of tzoras, he's going to have to bring birds again and again and again. But if it's within that one time frame, if it's within that one process of giving, of ultimately reaching the korban chatas, then he's going to get by with just 1 korban. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ad sheyavies hashema. Rabbi Yehuda says it's a different part in the process. So for someone who is needing to become pure from tzoras, they're going to have to bring the birds on day 1. They're also going to have to bring a korban olah, and they're going to have to bring a korban chatas, and they're going to have to bring a korban asha. So what we're disagreeing about is what part of the process is the tally considered as one part. So we had one opinion, which was that it's the sin offering, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it's until he has brought the korban asham. So if he's not brought that korban asham, then yes, you're going to have to repeat the rest of the processes again each time he emerges with saras. But as long as he hasn't brought the korban asham, it's going to be considered as one time lapse, so to speak. Mishnah Dalet. This is the 5th example, because we said there are 5 people that we're talking about. We had 4 in the previous Mishnah, and now we have a 5th. And I think he's not included in the previous Mishnah because I think officially he hasn't done an Aveira. So the Mishnah says, Ha'isha sheyalda v'lados harba, a woman who gives birth to several offspring. So she's not done an Aveira. She has to bring a korban because of things that she might have said, but she hasn't done an Aveira per se. So as we said, she is impure for 14 days. She then has 66 days of counting. So she's not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash. She's not allowed to eat sacrifices. So if during those days she becomes pregnant again and then miscarries again within the 80 days, and then again within the next 80 days, it's multiple times within those 80 days of the first miscarriage, so then she's only going to bring 1 korban. Hipila b'toch shmonim nekeva v'chazra v'hipila b'toch shmonim nekeva. So if she has multiple miscarriages, right, and she miscarries female fetuses within those 80 days, then she's going to have to bring one sacrifice for all of them. But hamapoles ta'omen, or if she miscarries twins, not necessarily at the same time, so it's going to all come under this one period. You only have to bring 1 sacrifice. Rabbi Yehuda Omer mavia ala rishon ve'ena mavia ala sheni. Rabbi Yehuda says it's only 1 korban if the miscarriages are within 80 days of each other, and if they're not, then you're going to have to bring, I think, for every 2. Is that right? Rabbi Yehuda says in these cases, a single offering does not suffice. Rather, she brings an offering for the first birth and does not bring for the second birth. Mavia ala shlishi ve'ena mavia ala revi'i. She brings for the 3rd one, but not for the 4th one. So for every 2, he says that she's going to have to bring a separate korban. Elu mevi'in korban ola v'yored. These are the people who are going to have to bring a sliding scale offering. Al shmias hakol. One who has heard the voice of an oath, meaning they have taken a false oath and they don't have any testimony on a particular issue, they are going to be chayev for a sliding scale offering. Va'al bitui sfasayim, one who swears an oath falsely, they are going to be chayev for a sliding scale. Va'al tumas mikdash v'kadashav, one who goes into the Beis Hamikdash while impure, or defiles or partakes in sacrificial consecrated items while in a state of impurity. V'hayoledes, one who gives birth. V'hamatzora, one who is a matzora, one who is undergoing purification for tzoras, all these 5 people, as part of their processes, are going to have to bring a sliding scale sacrifice. Going back then to this shifcha, what's the difference between her and all of the other violations of intimate relations that would warrant a person being liable multiple times? Because if you remember, we said that for a shifcha, you're only going to be chayav once, even if it was multiple times that you were intimate. So the Mishnah asks, what's the difference? Why isn't it going to be the same? Shalosh shavsa lahen lo ba'onesh v'lo b'korban. Doesn't look like we've got the English. It's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Shalosh shavsa lahen lo ba'onesh v'lo b'korban. They don't get the same punishment, and therefore there's not the same halacha for a korban. Shekol ha'arayos b'chatas, because for all other arayos there's going to be a liability, an obligation to bring a korban chatas, v'shivcha ba'asham. But for a being intimate with a shivcha charufa, which we said is this person who's half slave, half free, it's going to be a korban asham. Kol ha'arayos b'nekeva v'shivcha b'zachar. That's in brackets. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Kol ha'arayos echad ha'ish ve'echad ha'isha shaveh b'makos b'korban. With all other arayos, with all other inappropriate relationships, whether it's the man, whether it's the woman, they are both going to be lashed and both have to bring a korban. They don't have the same application of lashes, and there's not going to be the same level of obligation to bring a korban. With all other arayos, even the slightest penetration is going to be considered as full penetration, and the person who violates is going to be liable each time they are intimate. And that's not the case with a shivcha. It's more lenient because it has to be full penetration, and even if it's multiple times, as we said, it's only going to be one korban. And this is a stringency. This is a stringency that applies to the shivcha in the sense that we talked about, that you are going to be chayav whether you did it on purpose or whether you did it by accident, which is not the case with other types of arayos. Ask the Mishnah, Ezahi shivcha. What have we been talking about all this time when we've been talking about the shivcha? Answers the Mishnah, Kol shechetzia shivcha v'chetzia baskorin. This is a person who is half slave and half free. She's owned by 2 owners. So she's not a Jewish slave. So and she is half free and half slave, which means that she is considered half, well, when I say half Jewish, half non-Jewish, it's more that she's not considered fully Jewish, and she's not considered fully non-Jewish. That's what the Mishnah says. Shnei Ma, as it says in the pasuk, v'hefta lo niftasa divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says she was redeemed. She was not redeemed. She was partially redeemed. That's what we mean. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Zohi shivcha vadayis. No, that's not true at all, says Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says that this shivcha charufa is considered a full-fledged shivcha, full-fledged slave. Only in every under certain conditions can be someone else's. So they have Rabbi Yishmael has a different definition of what a shivcha charufa is. If I'm right in understanding it, he says that it is somebody who it's a shivcha who was betrothed to another slave, and someone else was with her while she was betrothed to another slave, designated for another slave, That's what Rabbi Shmuel would call a shifcha charufa. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, kol ha'arayos mefarashos. All of the categories of people who are forbidden to have intimate relationships with are described in the Torah. And the only one that's left, Umar Shiur, and the only one that's left, Ein lanu ela shechetzia shivcha v'chetzia bas chorin. The only one that's left that isn't specified by the Torah is this shivcha charufa, and therefore it must be someone who's half slave and half free. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah there agreeing with Rabbi Akiva, where since by the rules of exception, there's no other choice for what we could be talking about, and that's what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says. Therefore, is a shivcha charufa. And to finish off, ladies and gentlemen, with Mishnah Vav, other differences between a shivcha and a regular forbidden relationship. Kol ha'arayos echad gadol ve'echad katan hakatan patur. With all other forbidden relationships, if one of the parties is an adult and one is a minor, then the minor is exempt. Echad er ve'echad yashen. If one is awake and one is asleep, hayashen patur, then the one who is asleep is going to be patur. Echad shogeg ve'echad mezid, whether one is doing it by accident and one is doing it on purpose. Hashogeg b'chatas va'mezid b'kares. The one who does it by accident is going to have a korban chatas, and the one who does it on purpose is going to be chayav kares. Whereas with the shivcha charufa, there are going to be punishments even if they're a katan. I think that's what it's telling us. Even if they're asleep, and even if they did it on purpose or by accident, there's going to be liability involved. Is that what we are saying? No, that's not what we're saying. With a shivcha, if one was an adult and one was a minor, then they're both going to be exempt. Presumably, then, if one was awake and one was asleep, they're both going to be exempt. And if one was doing it on purpose and one was doing it by accident, then they're also both going to. Then they're both going to be exempt. Yeah. There we go. Mazel tov, ladies and gentlemen, on completing chapter 2, and we will see you next time. Where, please God, if we are lucky, we will go for chapter 3, and we will go for chapter 4, and I don't think we'll go for chapter 5. So there we are. Mazel tov, everybody. That's taken us an hour. Nice hour there. Well done.
Well done.
We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you, Rabbi.